My name's Erik. Hello, everyone. So I work at Siegel+Gale. Siegel+Gale is a brand agency. They were founded in 1969. One of the big ones. We have an office in London as well, right across the London Bridge, and founded in 1969. And we call ourselves the Simplicity Company because we've had that message all throughout the existence of our branding agency. We, for example, created the NBA logo, and we simplified the IRS tax forms back in the 70s from a stack like that to something like that, and came up with the name Novartis and lots of other things. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here because I'm talking about what everyone else is talking about, which is experience, and that's what brands have become nowadays, and especially our research, and then how we've implemented that brand in our experience. So I'm going to continue a bit off of what Simon was talking about. This is Sundar Pichai, Google's CEO, 2 years ago, when they announced that Google's strategy is now going to be that they're going from mobile first to AI first, and especially talking about AI assistants or chatbots. Saying, "Hey Google," and Alexa has Amazon has their Alexa, Microsoft has their Cortana, and so forth. And this has led a lot of brand agencies to think about the doom and gloom that might come from this if brands don't matter anymore. So this is still science fiction, but there's Spike Jonze's Her, and once we let those AI assistants in our lives, give them all the personal data that they need, and have absolute trust in them, that they can make the choices for us, so that we don't have to think about the mundane decisions in our lives of what juice we're going to purchase. This is my first orange reference. So that leads then to, if you don't tell the AI to purchase a specific juice, they're just going to compare two totally identical products. If one's cheaper, but they have the same amount of vitamins, the same amount of liquid in them, and they're basically the same product. I don't know if anyone's here from Innocent, but they're both great. Then the AI is going to go for the generic one. So, we in branding then, the next step of branding is going to be for people to specify that I would like this brand name of product, instead of just saying that I would like to buy some juice, and it's especially in the more boring products, say your water bills or electricity utilities or something like that, where you don't really care where it's coming from and the product is virtually identical. How are you going to make a difference there? So we had a study earlier this year, which was published in the Harvard Business Review, where we interviewed 5,000 people and asked them their opinions on these famous brands. And we noticed that there were two different groups of... All right, that wasn't for me. Two different groups of brands. One which we called usage brands, and one which we called purchase brands. So these blue brands right here, they were the ones that people talked about that they look up to them. Whereas these ones that are millennial pink are what users said that they make their life easier. Now, the blue ones are in a much higher risk area of being replaced by generic brands. So you tell your AI assistant that I would like a hotel in London, please. You don't really care if it's a Hilton, but you do care if it's an Airbnb though, because Airbnb has, like the rest of these brands, they've created a community around themselves. A community they've created loyalty, they've created more of an experience and something that the brand means something much more than just being a representative of it being a lemonade or a credit card. So, and well, I could ask, how many of you would prefer to be in this column with the ones the brands that you look on? And how many would like to be in this column here? That's the right answer. Good. So what drives brand loyalty and drives into that pink column most is simplicity. And this is a bold statement, but luckily I have the numbers to back that up. So we have a study that, in addition to the previous study, which we called the Global Brand Simplicity Index, where we've interviewed or surveyed 14,000 people from 9 countries on 850 different brands, and which now is going to be called World's Simplest Brands because we wanted to simplify it just a bit more. And we noticed that 64% of people are willing to pay more to get that simpler experience. And this is something that has been talked about today because time is valuable. And you're willing to pay a premium on something that you understand immediately, that's easy to use, and that just makes you feel like you belong in a community that understands what is important in this brand. And 61% are likely to recommend it as well, and that creates even more loyalty. But also, there's a huge amount, $86 billion, that is left on the table by brands because they're not simplifying their experience, and that is based on this index. The 10 first brands in our ranking of what are the world's simplest brands, we've been investing in them since 2009, and they've consistently outperformed the market. So the winner of, or the one that came number one last year, for example, was Aldi, which has is extremely simple. They have 100 items on their shelf, but they get an amazing amount of customers, and they're growing all the time. So, and kind of parroting what has been talked about here a lot is that your brand equals your experience. You can't build a restaurant and then expect people to come if you're not running the restaurant and preparing the food and thinking about what the experience in it is. So we come to our first fruit analogy. There, a lot of brands are ones that are very, very flashy, and have thought about what they look like on the outside, but then, and I don't know how many of you know what fruit this is. Right, so it's pitaya, or a dragon fruit. It was introduced to the West in the 90s from Vietnam, but originally it's from the Americas, and it grows on cacti. So, and it looks fabulous. It looks amazing. But once you cut into it and you taste the flesh of the fruit, it tastes pretty much like jelly that has poppy seeds in it. Very watery, and most people will try it once and then they'll be like, oh yeah, I tried that. It's meh. And a lot of brands are like that. You'll go for them because they advertise a lot and they've all the rage and look cool. But then when you get into the substance, that you find that it really isn't there. And then you have the complete opposite, which I call passion fruits, which clearly have substance, which are very interesting, and there's something very unique about them. There's a purpose inside them that drives them. They're unique brands, but on the outside, they're just crumply brown balls. Which I was just talking to a person yesterday, and they had never seen the outside of a passion fruit because they've only had it in smoothies and desserts. So that they wouldn't have bought that in the shop because they wouldn't have known what to do with it. And that's the problem with a lot of other brands, is that they have something unique inside them, but then they can't reflect it in their initial experience. So what we're going for is oranges, which are you can clearly see what they are like on that side. And it comes from within, and they're tasty, and they're one of the classics along with apples and bananas. It's a bestseller, always has been, and it's just a terrific fruit. Although now kind of being replaced by satsumas because they've got a better user experience and the peeling. But still, for these purposes, I'm going to use oranges. And then you might ask, what if you don't really have a uniqueness inside, and also like on the exterior you're not really doing your thing. I call those potatoes, which were brought to Europe from the West, from the Americas, and then people just ate them raw, and they didn't understand what to do with it until they had a paradigm shift, and they understood that if you boil them, then you can pretty much make or fry them or just cook them, and that they're not actually a fruit at all. And that's something that Siegel+Gale can help with, changing the paradigm of how you think about their brand. Fantastic analogies, right? So this is one of our clients, McLaren, a very known sports car / supercar. And they had this issue that they were constantly competing with both Ferrari or thinking of themselves and how can they beat Ferrari, how can they beat Porsche. And they didn't really understand where they fit into this spectrum of brands. So we did some qualitative research on this, and we found that there's an overlap between like these supercar owners like Ferrari and sports car owners like Porsche, which aren't that dear. And then we found that there was something that McLaren had that made it unique, and what was the tasty flesh of this fruit, and that was that they were serious about drivers. McLaren is not a car for people who are very flashy, but for people who are like motor geeks. They want the best driving experience that there is. So we renewed their brand from that perspective and came up with this minute-long video. Boom. So everyone feel that testosterone in your veins now? All right. Yeah, but that was the end outcome. What we started with was figuring out a way for the salespeople to talk about McLaren, and going from the inside of what their brand is, how their employees talk about it, how they sell it, to then what the video is and what the jingles are. Now another example, and that was more of a pitaya, so this is more a passion fruit. So there was a company called CSC, or Computer Services Corporation, which merged with a spin-off from Hewlett-Packard called Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Services. And they merged, and what they had was a fantastic culture. They were the world's best at IT enterprise services, extremely good at it, but the industry is stagnant, and they needed to show their culture and their purpose also on the outside. So we renamed them to DXC Technology. Because what they were talking about was digital transformation to their clients. And once their clients started working with them, the clients understood that, oh, you guys are amazing. You can do all of this thing. How come we're not seeing it outside? How can, So we created a brand center for them, which is open to the public and also to their people as well. And the people from CSC and HPE could join together under this one brand center, discuss among themselves what they think about the brand, what they're like, get to know each other, organize events, and also just get to know what their new brand looks like and see that it's all about their people and their stories. So that's two examples of pitayas turning into oranges and then passion fruits turning into oranges. And I'm coming back to is that your people are your brand. That's where it stems from, and that's the only way to keep it sustainable. And for the final study, this is based on the same material as the Global Brand Simplicity Index. So that's 14,000 people in 9 countries, 850 companies, and found that only 1 in 5 people found that their workplace is truly simple, that they understand what's going on, they understand what their relation is to the business goals, and that they can link their day-to-day work with what the company is doing. And this stemmed down to a variety of reasons. If the hierarchy was working, do they feel safe at work, and the brand communications inside the company. Of course, this had effects on trust, retention, which we mentioned earlier, whether someone stays at a job. Now it's even easier with LinkedIn to just change jobs from one to the other. What is it that keeps someone at a company? It's the simple purpose of the company. The advocacy, how people talk about the company to their friends and peers. And also, like, if you're at a simple workplace, it's easier to innovate because you're not scared of. You understand everything that's going on, so you understand what is the best time and place to introduce new ideas. How do ideas spring from the company, and how do they grow? So, I give 3 pieces of advice. So one is to understand your purpose and link it with the purpose of each employee at the company. So it's not the individual's purpose is not the same as the company's purpose. It might be something completely different, but they link it to what the company's purpose is, and that's where they find meaning. Getting away from just doing what your boss asks you to understanding what is the purpose of the company and using that in your organizational structure and hierarchy. And then taking the customer experience that's been talked about today a lot and the employee experience and bringing them to the same level and understanding that your employees are people too and they can see what you're talking about with the customers. and linking those two. And that leads me to the final theorem here. Your people and your brand, which is the inside of that orange, is your experience. Right. I wonder if anyone's feeling peckish for some fruit now. What do you guys think?